Resign Jonathan Quick right now.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1185 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Indeed. Still searching for a great candidate for your company? Don't search, just match with Indeed. And we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Rangers kick off their 4-game road trip with a pretty solid showing in Seattle. They get the shutout win 2-0 behind just a fantastic performance by Jonathan Quick, who continues to basically just defy father time, set back the clock every time that he's out there, and essentially just party like it's 2012, does Jonathan Quick. He's been absolutely fantastic for this team last year, and certainly this year after just a phenomenal start. Made all the more impressive by the fact that this is a guy that's used to being one of the elite goalies around the NHL, and the fact that he has transitioned so smoothly to life as a backup is just incredibly impressive. I mean, you look at what he's done, and another fantastic performance last night, a 24-save shutout for Jonathan Quick. To be exact, it was win number 397 of his career. Quick had an interesting quote about, reaching or getting near the 400 win plateau. I'm going to share that with you guys a little bit later here. I will say, though, you might have noticed the fact that it was only a 24-save shutout from Jonathan Quick. Now, that should take nothing away from the performance that he had, because it was quality over quantity in terms of the saves that Quick was making on this night. But I think we also have to give some credit to the Rangers, who frankly, at times have struggled badly defensively and basically relied on both Igor and Quick to stand on their heads and make all these ridiculous saves. Again, Quick made some really nice saves in this one, but at least the volume of shots and high-quality scoring opportunities was down a little bit due to the Rangers defending the front of the ice a lot better than they had been recently, defending the top of the crease there a lot better than they have been recently. So that's obviously a good sign. But as far as Quick goes, man, just never bet against a legend in any sport. They will find a way. When you think they're done, when you think they're cooked, or when you think they're washed, or whatever the newest buzz term is for somebody that's over the hill in professional sports, they'll figure out a way to surprise you. And we're obviously seeing that with Jonathan Quick right now. As far as some of his better saves of the night, we're going to highlight a few of these, and then I'm going to talk about why I think the Rangers need to look to do a deal with Jonathan Quick, another extension sooner rather than later, if at all possible. So first period, this is a nice save on Schwartz. He robbed Schwartz a couple of times in this game. There was one instance where I think Schwartz did the old, stick on top of the head thing, where he was just frustrated, unable to get the puck by Jonathan Quick. But there was a pass out of the corner, and Quick just made an awesome sprawling save and deflected it just wide of the post. And he stopped Schwartz again on the same shift right after this. Like I said, he got Schwartz multiple times in this game. The second period I thought was Quick's best, and probably not incidentally the Rangers' worst period of the night. It just felt like, the Rangers, they just weren't on the attack in the second period the way that they were in the first period. The shots on goal were about the same, but the Rangers went a long time without a single shot on goal in the second period. Felt like they were back on their heels in the second period more so than at any point during the rest of this game. But Jonathan Quick was there. There was a shot that went just wide of the net. It bounced off the boards behind the net, came back in front. Chandler Stevenson is there. He's looking to bury it from the doorstep, and that's when Quick was able to kick out his right pad, full extension backward to, get his skate against the pipe there and keep the puck from going in. And, I'm watching this, and to begin with, I'm already tremendously impressed by how well he's playing in this game, but I watched Quick make a save like this, and I'm thinking, man, isn't this the kind of save that aging goalies are supposed to struggle with? Well, apparently Jonathan Quick did not get that memo because this was a fantastic save here. And we got to give some credit to both Quick and K'Andre Miller on a play that happened a little bit later in the second period. We've been tough on Miller from time to time here, but he made a fantastic play getting back. Partial breakaway for Tanev. He's going in one-on-one with Jonathan Quick, but Miller's busting it to get back. And he got there, was able to make contact with Tanev, knocked Tanev to the ice. Tanev actually did make some contact with Quick. And Quick, I think, was credited with a save here, but obviously Tanev not able to get nearly as much on his shot as he would have, Miller had not gotten back, and made a nice physical play there to send him down to the ice. So a nice play by both Miller and obviously Quick as well. And then a big one here at the end of the second period. And we've talked about how it feels like the Rangers do at times scuffle a little bit, certainly at the start of periods, maybe at the end of periods a little bit as well. Wouldn't really say they were scuffling here, but there was kind of an out-of-nowhere opportunity for the Kraken in the closing seconds, which is obviously something you don't like to see either. But, the puck is just fired on net, and Quick with a big-time pad save, kicked it out, made the save. A little bit of a juicy rebound here, but a nice play by Ryan Lindgren. We've been tough on him at times too. Ryan Lindgren, though, got over, got in position, and was able to deflect the rebound attempt, obviously very far away from the net. Not sure if he would have beaten the buzzer, but who wants to take chances on a play like that? So a nice play by Lindgren there. And again, a fantastic save by Jonathan Quick at the end of the period there. But again, I just continue to be very, very impressed by what Jonathan Quick is doing. And it kind of begs the question, are we seeing an Antti situation with Jonathan Quick right now? What I mean by that, a lot of you guys will remember this. We got to go back about like 7 or 8 years, probably at least, probably like 8 or 9 years at this point, give or take. But there was a season where Lundqvist, he wasn't quite prime Lundqvist. He was getting into the back nine, but he was still an elite goalie. He had a minor injury. Ranta got to play a few games, stood on his head. Lundqvist was ready to come back, but they went with Ranta for an extra game or two there just because he was playing so well that you couldn't take him off the ice. I'm just wondering, man, are we getting into that situation with Jonathan Quick? Not saying that, Quick's going to be the starter for the rest of the season. He's going to start all the playoff games and everything. But at a certain point, when your hand is this hot, I feel like you have to be out there and you have to get at least somewhat more playing time than maybe was previously planned. But you look at what Jonathan Quick has done this season. 5 games, 4 starts. He came in relief of Igor Shesterkin in one of those games, but he's got a 4-0 record, a goals against average of 0.91, a save percentage of .970, and 2 shutouts. Now, those are obviously unsustainable numbers, but again, it does get to that point where it's like, all right, how do we not put this guy on the ice? How do we not have this guy between the pipes, for the next game? Bottom line, Rangers are on a 4-game road trip right now. Quick played the first one. The next 3 games in order are at Canucks, at Flames, and at Oilers. I think Quick could, should, and will get at least one of these games. And I get the feeling you might see a situation where Igor gets the next one against the Canucks. Igor then also plays against the Flames. And then Quick is out there for the road trip finale at the Oilers. And you might hear that and think you want your franchise goalie out there, Igor Shesterkin, against the Oilers. Oilers are obviously this high-powered team. You want him out there against McDavid and Draisaitl specifically. But if you look at, goals for per game, the Oilers are actually below average so far this season to, somewhat of a surprise. They've only got 50 goals in 18 games. I mean, it's not a tremendously low amount, but you expect maybe a little bit more from the Oilers than that. And it is below average right now. So, I'm good with doing it that way. If you want to go Igor again, and then Quick to close out the road trip, I'm cool with that. And all this is kind of leading me into the point that I mentioned in the intro of the show. I want Jonathan Quick re-signed. There might be some people that have some reservations about that. He is going to be 39 at the start of next season, and he'll turn 40 during next season. But, there's reasons to want this to happen. First of all, look at how he's playing. Secondly, by all accounts, he's been, a really positive, steady, voice in that New York Ranger locker room. He's taken on more of a leadership role, it sounds like. Obviously, when you're a backup goalie, I think you can do that a little bit more often than you can as a starting goalie. He was great during the playoffs last year, just encouraging his teammates to keep going in some of these, grueling games, some of the games that went into overtime. It's just great hearing stories like that. And of course, all this is contingent on the fact that, Jonathan Quick wants to keep playing. We don't know that for sure. And hey, if the Rangers win a Stanley Cup this season, maybe he decides to go out on that, hang up the skates, winning with, the team that I think he grew up as a Ranger fan. He's obviously from this area. So that might be a nice way for him to go out. But then again, he could have gone out with a Stanley Cup with Vegas the half season that he played there, chose not to do it. So who knows? We don't know for sure exactly what Jonathan Quick wants to do. There's always some risk involving any pro athlete that's in their late 30s, and especially when you consider that Jonathan Quick plays what you could make an argument is the most physically and mentally demanding position in all of sports. That argument can certainly be made. So that's something to consider as well. But I'll say what I've said all along, all the way back to when the Rangers signed Jonathan Quick a couple off seasons ago. I will take my chances with Jonathan Quick, even if he is getting up there in age, over just some random goalie who's going to make about the same amount of money anyway and has just been kicking around the league and is, basically a career backup. I'll take my chance with the living legend in Jonathan Quick. Now, as far as Quick's price, hard to say for sure. The first year with the Rangers, $825K. This year, he's up to $1.275 million. Will that price continue to rise? It's possible. But as a quick aside here, and we'll talk about this in greater detail in a future episode, Elliot Friedman reporting that the salary cap could actually jump this season by more, or rather next season, by more than what was initially expected. It was about to go up to 92.4. That's been the rumored number, but apparently with revenues being higher than expected for the NHL right now, it could bump up to as high as 95 million or 97 million. Again, this is according to Elliot Friedman. So we'll see. The other question that I have is, like, would Jonathan Quick want to be a starting goalie again? I mean, if he keeps playing like this, who's to say that it can't happen? It would take a really unique situation where I think you would have to find another team around this league that feels like it is a goalie away from winning a Stanley Cup, and a team that feels like it doesn't really have many other options. You could then go out and get Jonathan Quick on a one-year deal and push all your chips in if you're that team. That also depends on the fact that, would Jonathan Quick want to go somewhere else? Would he want to, because he is, again, from this area. I think this is kind of a nice situation for him that he's close to home. I don't know. I mean, that's a question only he can ask, but that would be wild to see Jonathan Quick as a starting goalie again next season. But I hope that doesn't happen. I mean, it's up to him, obviously. I want him to do whatever he wants, but I hope that Jonathan Quick is a part of this team going forward, at least for next season. And if they want to sit down, do an in-season contract negotiation with Jonathan Quick, then by all means, they can do that. But I mentioned a minute ago, interesting quote from Jonathan Quick here about his 397 wins. This is what he had to say after the game. You're honored to have those numbers, but at the end of the day, as a goalie, you're very dependent on your team in front of you. All those numbers really mean is I've played with some great players and teams that value winning more than anything. And that's just an awesome quote. I mean, there's humility, and then there's that. I mean, he is like completely deflecting the fact that he's got 397 wins and basically just saying, yeah, it's all my teammates. That's why I got here. And there's some truth in that, but, Jonathan Quick, certainly he's earned it. I don't think you get 400 wins by accident, that's for sure. So going to keep everything rolling in just a second. Jonathan Quick obviously doing a phenomenal job to start the season. We will go ahead and talk a little bit about the Rangers. Zac Jones obviously off to a fantastic start this season. It's really a cool story of perseverance. We're going to give him his due, and we will do that in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Indeed. We are driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. If you need to hire, you need Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work, use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed data survey. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/lockedon. Just go to Indeed.com/lockedon right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here on Locked On New York Rangers. Huge shout out to the everydayers. As always, the West Coast trip continues for the Blue Shirts, and the Rangers are going to be back in action on Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern Time in Vancouver. Whatever happens in that game, we'll break it down in the next episode. But for right now, let's continue talking about this game, and more specifically, Zac Jones' performance in this game, and really just his ongoing performance from the entire season. And the question that this all begs is Zac Jones finally a permanent member of this New York Ranger lineup? We've asked this question in the past. There's times in the past where it feels like the door is open. It feels like it's his for the taking. And then for one reason or another, it just doesn't happen, whether it's, a journeyman defenseman that's in with the Rangers, or the Rangers make a trade at the deadline, or it's a fellow prospect like Nils Lundqvist. Obviously, Zac Jones we'll just say he's passed by Nils Lundqvist. Obviously, Lundqvist no longer a member of this team. And even this year, another prospect in Victor Mancini, phenomenal training camp for Mancini, phenomenal preseason. He was here. He's obviously now back in the AHL, which quick side note, that is the right thing to do with Victor Mancini. If he's not going to be in the lineup and if he's going to be a healthy scratch game after game after game after game, then send him down to the AHL, let him get some more seasoning, some more development. And obviously the Rangers recalled Chad Ruhwedel to serve in that seventh defenseman role. But it feels like this time might be different. It feels like this really is Zac Jones' time to shine. He has outplayed multiple long-standing members of the New York Ranger blue line this season, some guys that are part of that top five there that really haven't changed over the last couple of years here. Jones has been one of the best defensemen on the ice for the Rangers. And as far as his competition goes, I don't feel like he really needs to look in his rearview mirror anymore, because they're not going to take him out of the lineup in favor of one of the veteran defensemen in the organization. So he's not going to sit for Chad Ruhwedel or Scanlon or Mackey or Harper or any of those guys. Matthew Robertson, you never hear a peep about him anymore. I just don't think that that's going to happen. Really, the only guy that is providing Jones any competition, and it's the guy that we just mentioned, is Victor Mancini. But like I just said, it feels like Jones kind of won that battle. And for right now, I feel like the Rangers think that the best thing for Mancini is for him to get more seasoning and a heck of a lot more minutes in the AHL. And that probably is the way to go. And if you're a fan of Mancini, such as I am, my best advice is just be patient, because I don't think there's any way that by the start of next season, at the very latest, that Victor Mancini will not be a member of this New York Ranger lineup going forward. I feel like they saw enough from him that they feel good and that his time is going to come. You look at the rest of the blue line after this season. Lindgren's at UFA. I think he's probably on his way. I don't think Jacob Trouba is going to be back next season one way or another. We'll see. Never know for sure. Even Miller. I mean, is Miller really a slam dunk to be back? That could go either way. He's an RFA with arbitration rights, if I'm remembering correctly. But, we'll see. Regardless, I feel like Victor Mancini, especially when you factor in his very minimal cap hit on his ELC, he's going to be in the lineup next season at the latest. Something that I thought was kind of interesting for Jones in this game, though, and Schneider, too. We've been talking about how well that pairing is done together and how they deserve more ice time. And in recent games, I feel like their ice time has gone up a tick, but this was actually the least amount of ice time that Zac Jones has had in any of the last 5 games. He got 14 minutes, 54 seconds in this game. Braden Schneider was the only Ranger defenseman with less time on the ice in this one, 14:29. And what's funny about that, too, is that Jones and Schneider were the 2 defensemen that were on the ice for both of the Ranger goals. So they're both a +2 again, and continue to just play solid, consistent hockey, does that pairing. I also want to talk about, we're going to get to Zac Jones' goal in just a second, but I want to talk about just the end of the second period and the beginning of the third period as a whole for the Rangers, because I thought they obviously played very well there, and those were the times in the game where they scored the 2 goals. So we're going to talk about the Lafreniere goal here, and then we're going to shift our attention to Zac Jones, back to Zac Jones, and talk about why he should be a permanent member of this lineup right now. But basically, the Rangers get a sustained offensive zone possession. They didn't have a ton of these in the game, but they got it here when it counted. And eventually, you've got Trocheck making a play that was kind of under the radar here. Trocheck actually fell down, was able to get back up and make contact with the defenseman, and then the puck went free to Panarin along the boards. Panarin, a great pass from along the boards to Lafreniere on the other side of the net, and Lafreniere tips it home for the goal, gives the Rangers a 1-0 win. So a really nice goal there, and obviously the Rangers had to stick with it and get that goal. Despite having some chances earlier in the game and having nothing to show for it. That put them up 1-0. And then the third period, I thought the Rangers had a really strong start to the third period here. Lafreniere almost scored again. And then we had Zac Jones making what was probably the play of the night, at least by a skater. You could probably put some of the Jonathan Quick saves ahead of this, but Zac Jones, tremendous individual effort on this play. First of all, Will Cooley, a nice play in the Ranger defensive zone to steal the puck, knock his guy off the puck, and then he makes a short pass to Zac Jones. Jones moves from one side of the Ranger zone to the other side, goes up the boards, gets to the Ranger blue line, and then passes ahead to Will Cooley. Now, Cooley at this point, he's in the neutral zone, but he's past the red line. So he's looking to just dump the puck. He's looking to shoot it into the offensive zone, which he does. Rangers do get a little bit of a break here because it hits a Seattle defender and falls right in front of Kaapo Kakko. Kakko then with a pass to his left to Zac Jones, and Zac Jones buries it. A little bit of a soft goal allowed by Philip Grubauer there, but that makes it 2-0. So a little bit of a lucky break or two on this play for the Rangers, but they earned that, and certainly Zac Jones earned that. Jones on this one play, on this one rush, in this one sequence here, made plays in all 3 zones. Obviously getting control of the puck in the defensive zone, forcing his way into the neutral zone, making a tough pass to Cooley, and then getting to the other side of the ice and getting in position to receive that pass from Capo Caco. Zac Jones doing it all on this play. And it wasn't just the goal. Jones was tremendous in this game just in general. The second period, minor play here, but I think it does matter because the Rangers went almost half of the second period without getting a shot on goal. And eventually it was Zac Jones who got a quality shot on goal, was fought off by the blocker of Philip Grubauer. So, that's something. But then later, a really nice defensive play by Zac Jones. And I know there's some Ranger fans that have some reservations about Zac Jones due to his size or lack thereof, especially when it comes to postseason hockey. Will he be able to hold up against these, heavy forechecking teams? It's a fair question. We'll never know unless we give him the chance, though. And he made a nice play here against McCann. He bodied him. And Jones initially was looking to pass this puck back behind the net, and it wasn't there. So instead, he was able to get the puck past McCann, up the boards to Chris Kreider, and then Kreider was on his way into the neutral zone. But a really nice play there by Zac Jones to body his guy, take the puck away, and then find the open man in Chris Kreider, get the puck moving in the opposite direction. And I love this, too. Jones was able to spring Adam Edstrom on a breakaway in the third period. Jones has the puck behind the Ranger net, and you think he's just kind of surveying the ice and he's going to bring it out slowly. Instead, he makes a heck of a pass up the left side to Edstrom. Edstrom gets behind just about everybody. There was a defenseman bearing down, and that probably prevented Edstrom from getting as good of a shot away as he would have liked, but he got the shot on goal. It was saved. But again, another outstanding pass there by Zac Jones. Jones is turning into a very dynamic defenseman right before our eyes. And like I said, to bring it all back to my original point, I think that Jones is at a point where, I think he's there. He's going to be a permanent member of this Ranger lineup going forward. You never know what they can do at the trade deadline. Maybe they bring in somebody else. But honestly, even if they did that, even if the Rangers added, a significant defenseman at the trade deadline, a guy that would be a top 4 defenseman on any team in the NHL, I don't feel like it should be Zac Jones that loses his roster spot, at least not if he's still playing the way that he is by the time that the trade deadline rolls around. We'll see how the Rangers look to do it. A million things can happen between now and then, but Jones should be in this lineup going forward. That is for sure. And I will say one last thing really quickly here. Some of you might have seen this tweet that I sent out before the game. I'll do a quick victory lap here because I said that both Johnny Brodzinski and Zac Jones would score a goal in this game. Obviously, Jones got one. Brodzinski hit the crossbar in the second period. So a little Bardowski action, and I would have gone 2 for 2 there. And Brodzinski actually had a chance in the first period fairly early, a little bit of a scramble in front of the Ranger net. I think it was Lindgren who took a shot from the blue line, and the puck was kind of bouncing around there. Brodzinski got close to it, wasn't able to convert. But, while we're talking about Brodzinski, I think he did a nice job holding it down for Philip Hedl as the third line center. That line had a nice night. And, all the best to Philip Hedl again. That's going to be an ongoing theme going forward. We're going to keep track of Philip Hedl and his status. And can he come back? Will he come back? Should he come back? Obviously, that's going to, continue for as long as it does. So we'll keep an eye on that as well. But Zac Jones, kudos to him for sticking with it. A lot of times over the years where it feels like he should have been in the lineup and there's just one reason or another why it doesn't happen. He's finally there. And obviously, that's great to see. So we're going to keep everything rolling into a second here. I want to shift our attention to this upcoming Ranger road trip as a whole. Obviously, it's now underway. We're going to compare it to the road trip that happened last season when the Rangers went 5-0. We'll get to all that fun stuff in just a second. All right, we just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best way to give real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks keeps your lineup alive. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Once again, download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, figure we can go ahead and wrap up today's episode by talking a little bit about just the idea of the Rangers going on this road trip, and if it's happening at a good point in the season, I think it is. The Rangers have been great on the road in general this season. You look at their stats coming into this game as far as how they fare on the road. They were 5-1 on the road this season coming into this game. Obviously now 6-1. Coming into this game, also leading the NHL in goals for per game on the road at 4.83 goals per game, and also leading the NHL in goals against per game on the road at 1.67. So the goals against has actually gone up because Quick obviously got the shutout. The goals for is, maybe going to come back down to earth a little bit. It will eventually, it can't last forever. And obviously that goals for is inflated by the 6-0 win against Pittsburgh and the 7-2 win against Montreal. I get that, but it's early in the season, and obviously the numbers are going to fluctuate a little bit. Bottom line, it all adds up to a team that has done very, very well on the road this season. Not just winning, but obviously winning in dominant fashion in several instances. And what I think makes this even more impressive is that, Seattle was hot coming into this game. They're in the middle of a 6-game homestand. This was game number 5 of their 6-game homestand. They had won 4 in a row before that, and obviously, the Rangers went in and shut that down and were able to beat a team that's been scoring a lot of goals and winning a lot of games and completely shut them down and blanked them on their home ice. So that was obviously great to see. But it also, this road trip kind of makes me think back to last season. I'm sure a lot of you have felt this way as well. That early season road trip last year was when the Rangers really kind of spread their wings a little bit and made you believe that this could be a special season. And in some ways, last year was a special season. There's a limit on how special it can be if it doesn't end with a Stanley Cup, but we had a lot of fun watching this team last season. They made a heck of a run at it, and hopefully they can take it even further this season. But yeah, to kind of revisit what they did last year, it happened a little bit earlier in last season than it's currently happening now this season. Last year, the Rangers were 2-2 heading into the 5-game road trip. They had just lost at home against Nashville by a final score of 4-1 in Madison Square Garden. Wasn't a good night for the Rangers. They then go 5-0 on the road trip. They beat Seattle 4-1. They beat Calgary 3-1. They beat Edmonton 3-0. They beat Vancouver 4-3 in overtime. Keandre Miller with your overtime winner. And then they beat Winnipeg 3-2, also in overtime. Mika Zibanejad with your overtime winner. And you look at this season, and just because it happened last year, it's not any guarantee that it's going to happen again this year. But I do think that the Rangers, clearly they're a team that does well on the road. It galvanized them last year. There's no reason to think it can't galvanize them again this year. That's certainly at least possible. We just saw them beat Seattle. Up next in order, you got Vancouver, Calgary, and Edmonton. And what you'll notice about those 4 teams, those are 4 of the same teams that they beat on last year's road trip. And again, last year was 5 games. This year's 4 games. The only difference really is that they're not going to play Winnipeg this time around. But regardless, hey, the stars are all lining up, right? They could have another really nice road trip, could the Rangers. And I think, the fact that certain players on this team are slumping, sometimes going on the road's not the worst thing ever. Like I said, it can kind of galvanize a team a little bit. And obviously, we hope that happens with this Ranger team. Also, it's another good time to point out the fact that you guys will know, the everydayers know, I'm big on how a team responds to a loss. If you come out and you have a tough loss or you just play badly, you can lose a game and still play very well. But if you're coming off of a bad performance especially, that's what I'm really, really watching that next game. And okay, how are the Rangers going to respond to this? How are they going to get back on the horse after they've been knocked off, so to speak? Here are the results that the Rangers have had in games following a loss so far this season. And they've lost a total of just 4 games so far. These are the 4 games that have happened immediately after a loss for the Rangers this season. The first Ranger loss was followed up with a 4-1 win at home against Detroit. Then you had, after the second Ranger loss, a 2-1 win at home against Anaheim. After the third Ranger loss, you had a 2-1 win at home against Ottawa. And after the fourth Ranger loss, a 4-0 win at Detroit. And there were actually 5 losses. The fifth Ranger loss, a 3-2 win at home against San Jose. Now, these are not all lopsided wins, and these are clearly not some of the truly elite teams of the NHL. But facts are facts. The Rangers this season, 5-0 after a loss. We're past the midway point of November here, and the Rangers have not had back-to-back losses all season. That includes overtime losses. Obviously, they've only had 1 overtime loss, but still, there are things to like here. Now 11-4-1 overall. For as much as we've nitpicked this team and as much as certain players have scuffled a little bit out of the starting blocks, I think that's encouraging, the fact that the Rangers have survived. And there are things they have to do better, 100%. But they have survived a lot of their big-name players stumbling a little bit out of the starting blocks. They've had some inconsistent play here and there. Bottom line, it all adds up to an 11-4-1 record. A team that has now won 2/3 of their games, more than 2/3 of their games, and has gotten points in 75% of their games. So that's very encouraging. A couple closing notes here before we call it a day. I also thought I wanted to talk in more detail about this, but we had to talk about Quick. We had to talk about Jones, and certainly I wanted to kind of relive last year's road trip. The Rangers, I thought in this game, got off to a far better start than they've typically been enjoying so far this season. I just mentioned a second ago, there's been certainly things we can nitpick this year. That's one of them. The Rangers have not exactly stormed out of the starting blocks in a lot of games this season, but they had their legs moving. They were peppering the net, getting pucks toward the net early in this game. They got away from that a little bit in the second period, but they came out firing the puck. And, I thought all four lines looked good. They were rolling four lines. Everybody was moving. Everybody was playing with a sense of urgency right from the opening faceoff. So I thought that was very, very encouraging. They did end up getting outshot 24-23. Again, for a game that was as fast-paced as this one was and a lot of up-and-down hockey, maybe not quite as many shots on goal as you would expect. But regardless, I still think the Rangers had a much better start in this game than they've had recently. Another note in this game, Ryan Lindgren finally back to wearing his normal helmet. That's got to be a literal and metaphorical weight off of his shoulders because, that's just not a comfortable way to play hockey, I wouldn't think. And Ryan Lindgren especially, man, that just doesn't work. He's got to be out there with a normal helmet. He can't have the fishbowl on his head anymore. And one more stat I wanted to throw at you guys that I thought was kind of interesting, and it does relate to the Rangers because it involves two former Rangers. Obviously, Alex Ovechkin, we know the story. He's trying to close in on Wayne Gretzky. I believe he's like 30 or 31 goals behind Wayne Gretzky, and we're all wondering, is he going to pull it off this year? He's off to a phenomenal start so far this season. But Ovechkin last night scored a goal against Ilya Samsonov, and the reason why this is noteworthy is because that is the 177th different goalie that Alex Ovechkin has beaten for a goal in his career. And that ties him with Patrick Marleau for number 2 all time in goalies beaten for a goal. And the only player that has beaten more goalies for a goal than Alex Ovechkin is Jaromir Jagr. He's got 178, former Ranger Jaromir Jagr. So Jagr is only one goalie beaten ahead of Alex Ovechkin so far this season. But regardless, just thought that was an interesting stat. Obviously involves a couple of former Rangers in Gretzky and Jagr. And, that's going to be an interesting NHL storyline to track. Obviously this season, will Ovechkin pull it off this year? We shall see. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Thanks again, guys. I will see you next time.